Conor Whelan, thank you so much for bringing me to your favourite bar, TJ's in Galway.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, TJ Clark's supposed to be one of the smallest pubs in Ireland. So yeah, I suppose my winter evening we've spent inside there where we I suppose yeah, it's a little bit close for comfort, but we won't complain.
Yeah, I'm just observing when I was having a look at it just before you joined me. I was saying I could nearly order a bar for somebody on the street and actually give it to them. It looks that small. It's incredible. I mean, is that a bad shot? I mean, is it 6 feet wide or whatever it looks like there? Eight,
Yeah, I
maybe
think
feet?
it's about that. Yeah, I think it's one of them pubs where when you walk up to the door and your man says it's full, I think you can look inside and make the assessment yourself, really, rather than thinking maybe he's just turning you away. So,
And how
yeah, I
wide is it?
suppose.
Is it this way? How far is it? Is there just one
Uh,
bar I get?
yeah, what would it be? 3 meters wide, four maybe max. Fairly small, yeah. Um,
I
so
certainly.
yeah, I think it opened up there in the last 2 years. Supposed to be one of the smallest pubs in Ireland, but yeah, I suppose it's kind of unique because when you go in there, it's so small that you're nearly within talking distance to everyone. So you're always meeting different characters in there, and yeah, you kind of have no excuse but to interact and talk. So yeah,
And obviously,
it's kind of unique in that way, I suppose.
I know that you play one of our national sports, hurling. So I guess he asked you to leave your sticks outside when a gang of you are coming in. Just there's no room, right?
Yeah, there's definitely no room for the gear bag in the corner anyway. So yeah, the hurling talk is very much to the forefront inside there. Yeah, I think it's a big Galway football and hurling pub. So yeah, you might be able to leave the gear outside, but I think the conversations do usually be
I
around
remember
sport. So
I remember seeing the photograph. And I'm sure it's the same. You see it all the length and breadth of every county. Is a picture outside a church in Kilkenny, and there was about 100 hurley sticks,
yeah, yeah.
all piled up, and it gave you a sense of what the lads had to do. Bring your sticks and bring your prayers. So I'm sure it was the same when you were in school and college. It's nearly. Is a hurley stick meant to be like your sixth finger or your third arm? Is that the psychology behind it?
There'll be an extension of your arm, supposedly, yeah. So you
Yeah.
should carry it so much in your hand, particularly as a young lad, that it's almost like an extension of your arm. So yeah.
Well, we have quite a few people international who wouldn't have a clue what we're talking about. Go onto YouTube, type in hurling, and sit down when you're watching it because buckle up is a word that I often hear mentioned about it, right?
Or else you'll have to organise a host and Ireland trip to go and watch a game, maybe.
Oh, we'll have to. So you're in there, you're in TJ Clark's, we're sitting down, and somebody comes around the corner, dead or alive, and you have €5 in your pocket, you're buying them a pint. Who is it?
I'd say Roy Keane, I'd say would probably be the one I'd love to meet and have a pint with. Um, I think just for the fact that he is who he is, and I suppose I consider him one of Ireland's greatest ever sporting icons and stuff like that. So, yeah, the fact he's still alive, and he's, I suppose, type of character that you would fancy your chances of actually meeting somewhere along the line. So, he'd probably be the one that I'd love to chat to, but I wouldn't be asking him for a picture now or anything like that. So.
And would you see yourself in? Obviously, competitiveness is something that's ingrained, whether you're at the top of the league or the bottom of the league. You are all fiercely competitive. Would you see that? I mean, that was one of the things that I saw in Keane. He did an amount of talent which was better than most, but where he actually excelled was just his application and competitiveness. Is that what do you most admire and when you look back at him playing? I know now he's he's an interesting character listening to him, but what as a sportsman, what do you admire most or
Yeah, I think it's just the consistency, really, I suppose, that he showed year in, year out to try and, I suppose, push himself to the absolute limits. And yeah, I suppose, look, when you look back at our Irish soccer, I suppose, really, there's very few that have actually went to the heights that he's went to. And I suppose to be playing for the probably arguably the best club in the world in football, and you think about the amount of, I suppose, people that grow up striving to be that, and for him to be the captain of that, I suppose, and anyone you listen to talking about it, he was very much the driving force behind that. So I think more so his mentality and he's also very appears to be very very humble as well behind it all. And I know he's a major Cork hurling fan, so yeah, it'd be no harm to sow it into him from that side as well. So
But if you look at his, and I'm sure you've got colleagues and even playing buddies as well, that if you look at the underage teams, he didn't quite make the underage teams, but he kept going. So sometimes kids that make the 14s, the under 14s, the under 15s, the under 18s, they get too ahead of themselves. He just kept plodding along, doing the right thing, the right order, and he obviously got good habits. And
yeah, I think even his entire career was kind of built around that as well, where he probably wasn't the most flashiest player, but he was just consistent and the driving force behind it. And yeah, he just seems very, very humble and very down to earth about it. And yeah, seems to very much be his own person. So yeah, he'd probably be the one from an Irish context that you'd
fantastic.
that
So
you'd
we'll
love
put
to meet for a pint.
him in the corner. Roy, thanks very much. That's great. Now you're going to tell Roy what motivates you, what keeps you motivated.
Um, Yeah, I suppose probably a couple of different facets. I suppose coming from a sporting context, I suppose you're always striving as a team to be successful. And I think the aspect of being a team player and I suppose not wanting to let your team down. I think that's pretty similar in a working context. I think a lot of the time it's not even about what the boss or the manager will think. It's actually about your teammates and not wanting to let them down. And then I suppose there's your own personal intrinsic ambitions about what you want to achieve and succeed. And I suppose striving to try and I suppose a lot of the time it's like climbing a mountain or climbing Everest. It's about the journey of trying to get there as opposed to the actual end goal. And yeah, I suppose on a daily basis you try to build your life around that. Some days you feel you're close to achieving it, and other days you feel like you're a million miles away. And I suppose business and sport is that's the thing that makes it so unique in terms of some days you think you have it all figured out, and some days you think you don't know anything at all about it. So yeah, I suppose that's the challenge. I suppose really.
Isn't that the truth? With particularly with regard to teamwork and teams, when you grow up playing whatever sport, I can nearly spot a tennis player within 10 minutes when I walk into a meeting, or a swimmer. they're quite they're quite solo sports, they're quite self-centered sports and all the rest. Whereas you tend to see a team player, or rugby, or a soccer, or a hurling, because we all realize that we all want to be the center forward. But you know what? If it means I have to be my best me at a left full back, but I get a game, I'm all in.
Yeah, yeah. Our boss calls it his a castle group. He calls it the full forward line. So he I suppose in GA your full forward line is usually the one that does the scoring. So I think everyone else has to almost adapt and support him around that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I suppose it is very similar in terms of everyone playing their position. And if somebody decides that they want to go off and do their own thing, then the rest of the team suffers. And yeah, I suppose I've been fortunate to be involved in a successful business like Castle Group, and also from a sporting context, Galway GAA. And yeah, I suppose there's massive correlations between both, and understanding your role, I suppose, really.
And there's a word you use regularly, and one that you haven't used at all, which I'd just like to go back on. You've used the word goals a lot, and you haven't used the word winning, which is an interesting observation, because was that mindfully, or is that just by coincidence? Because goals and winning, they sometimes, for the 15 lads at the end of the season, are the same, but often they're not for the other 20, 31 teams, right? So goals, that's interesting. You didn't say winning, you said achieve your goals.
Yeah, I suppose there's lots of research done on, yeah, I suppose my background is on I'm doing a PhD on mental health and well-being, and I suppose a massive part of that is, I suppose, what's called eudaimonic well-being, where you strive to achieve your goals. I think a lot of people do kind of mix that up around the success aspect of it. And for me, I think a lot of the time when you're setting your goals, you have to understand that the goal is the end point. But sometimes that's out of your control in terms of whether that's successful or not. And I think my view on it is that it's almost about the methodology of achieving the goal as opposed to the actual goal itself. So if you say that you want your business to be successful, it's about what you're doing on a daily and weekly basis to achieve that goal, rather than at the end of the year, my business is up X, so this means that it's successful or not. So I suppose, yeah, I kind of look at it around habits and behavior, and look at it in terms of a daily and weekly, what you're doing in terms of the end goal. Because I find sometimes a lot of people get burdened by the end goal. So I suppose if you look at it from the perspective of climbing Everest, if you set out and your whole thing is around reaching the top, I think you'll probably come unstuck along the way. Whereas when you focus on, I suppose, what you're trying to do to try and achieve that, I think that brings more success, I suppose, really.
Such an interesting way that you described that, both from an academic, from a sport, and a business perspective, and the way that the story blends together, being able to take learnings from one and cross it over to the other. That's really interesting. I remember reading somewhere, it may have been about GAA, I think it was, that an All Ireland winning captain said, "You must be very proud picking up the cup in September." He said, "No, no, no. We won this in January, February, and March."
Yeah, yeah, that's the classic GA one, right?
But it's
When all the
it's on point to what you've just said. It's sort of, there's a process. Process is the word I hear a lot. Trust the process. Trust the methodology. Is that?
Yeah, essentially, like I think a lot of the time when you're trying to achieve something, I think it all comes back to your methodology. So if you and me decide that we want to set out, I'm going to try and be a successful business, you're going to try and be a successful business or sports person, etc. We both have the same in goal, but we may have different methods around achieving that. And I think a lot of the time people get obsessed with setting goals. I'm going to be A, B, C, but you don't actually look at how am I actually going to do this like. And yeah, I suppose that's the thing where you probably want something so bad that you probably come away from your process and you actually go away from the thing that has brought you to be in a position to set a goal like
Mm,
that. So
yeah.
yeah, I suppose it's very interesting, I suppose, really.
Oh, it's fantastic, and it is fascinating because we get into our lanes and we talk about business and we talk about selling stuff and we sell buying stuff, and then you use margin. When in actual fact, if we probably know more about loads of other stuff that we can bring to the table, that by the way is way more interesting than buying and selling stuff.
Yeah, it's true.
So listen,
Yeah.
Roy's been putting his box over there. He knows all about your motivation. There's a massive electricity storm, and you've only 3 apps on your phone, and that's it. What are you going to do? What are they?
Yeah, I suppose WhatsApp probably be the number one. Uh, Contacts. Although sometimes you mightn't even want to be getting messages, but I suppose, yeah, something goes wrong.
When you win,
Uh,
you want them to flow.
yeah, and when you lose, you're wondering is the app working, or what's the story with it? Yeah, I suppose that one. I probably use Instagram a little bit. Yeah, just I suppose an outlet, I suppose, really, in seeing how wonderful other people's lives are. That'll probably be the second one. And the last app, probably Sky Sports. I love reading articles about football on that. Very good analysis and stuff like that. So might even be able to watch the game on my phone if there's no TV working. So
Well, what's interesting there is that you allow the phone not to rule you. You actually, well, apart from the first one, the second one are more about your own personal leisure time and your own interests and stuff. What I see a lot of is that people go so narrow and so deep into their own stuff that they never lift their head, as it were. I love sport. I love every sport, particularly around Olympics time. But I think you must also be fall prey to this. Everybody becomes an expert after they've watched one match. I was an expert at high diving, jumping by the end of the Olympics. I knew the splash, I knew the form, I knew the
Yeah, yeah.
stand, and I had a comment on it, I had a view on it. It must be tough when you're out in the pitch. It must be tough when everybody suddenly becomes experts. It's that, and again, for those that aren't listening, there is a great saying in Ireland called the hurlers on the ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What
we have plenty of them.
so explain to those that don't quite understand what a hurler on the ditch is.
Um, a hurler in the ditch is essentially somebody who doesn't know anything about what they're talking about, essentially. So like I find a lot of the time people that are in the knowledge around hurling, they would look at a game and they probably would be like, yeah, look, at the end of the day, it's sport, people trying their best, etc., etc., etc. Whereas a hurler in the ditch, sometimes I find does almost make it personal that, the person went out, they were almost trying not to win, and they don't really know what they're talking about. Like it could even be that they mightn't even know some of the players' names, but they're still yet they think they know. I suppose where it all went wrong, and I suppose that's the beauty of sport is that there's such emotion involved in it that it actually matters to people, and it can actually make or break someone's day. And I suppose when you're inside the circle of that, it's your job to try and I suppose block out that noise as much as possible, and that can be challenging in a place like Galway, working in Castle Group where it's all local people. Sometimes I do avoid office on a Monday or a Friday before a game. So, but yeah, I suppose look at it. Everyone, the vast majority of people want to support you and see you doing well. And I think just sometimes there's hurlers in the ditch that no more than me talking about, I suppose, the Six Nations rugby or stuff like that. Like I wouldn't really know a whole pile about it, but like you said, I might pipe up with an opinion here and there. So I'd probably be considered a rugby supporter on the ditch. So yeah, I suppose look at it. It's all
It
in
doesn't
good
have the same
good
flow.
nature.
A rugby. No, it doesn't have the same flow. Hurler on the ditch is
No.
sort of, but it sounds, and we'll finish up with this. It sounds like you've got to, when you're where you are, you need to build calluses, not just on your hands. You got to
Yeah,
build.
and I suppose look, that's probably the biggest challenge for younger players coming through that I suppose grow up more ingrained with social media that I suppose being a hurler in the ditch is kind of renowned with I suppose the local lad in the pub who comes over and he gives you his opinion after a game, etc., etc. But
Mm,
when that goes to social media and things like Twitter and it can often get personal. And yeah, I suppose I found that I suppose younger players have found that challenging where they'd almost be going on and seeing stuff written about themselves and
yeah.
taking that personally. And yeah, I suppose that's the challenge, I suppose, really to try and I suppose shut out that noise.
So what I think it's apt and appropriate, Conor, that we'd finish with what Roy Keane called that gang when he was in his playing days. He called them the Prawn Sandwich Brigade.
What was his interpretation from that?
Because he said there was no atmosphere at all in some of the matches that he went to in Old Trafford, and why that was because the true fan that could fill the lower was being squashed out by the corporate boxes, who basically were hurlers on a ditch, probably coming along to a match and having an opinion, and then asking at the end, was that a round ball, oval ball, or small ball they were playing with? So I think that was his view, was that there's too many prawn sandwich brigades. That was his. I think anyway. Conor, it's been short and sharp. We've been in a lot of places, and you've demonstrated the links between academia, science, sport, business. It's been really interesting, and I thank you for your time. And TJ for the smallest pub in Ireland.
Perfect. Thanks a million.
Thanks a million. Cheers.